What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I am back with another video where this time we're going to rank the best Finals MVPs from the 2000s decade. As always, I appreciate you guys watching, and if you haven't subscribed, please make sure to do so, and if you could like this video, I would appreciate it tremendously. Now with all that out of the way, let's get into our video and finally dive in to this top 10 list. So first up at number 10 we have Paul Pierce from the year 2008. And Pierce at this point was 30 years old and had yet to make it past the conference finals. But lucky enough for Pierce in 08, Kevin Garnett as well as Ray Allen would join him in Boston, forming the team's first big three since the late 80s. And looking at his play in the 08 finals, he had a pretty decent series, averaging 22 points, 6 assists, 5 boards on 43, 39, and 83 splits. Not crazy outlandish stats, but definitely pretty good for a player on a Big 3 and championship team. And definitely the most iconic game from this series came in Game 4 in Los Angeles. As in this game, Pierce's Celtics got down by 24 points early in the third quarter. But as you remember, Paul Pierce, Eddie House, James Posey, Ray Allen, all those guys had stellar second halves en route to Boston having the biggest comeback since 1971. And after taking that commanding 3-1 lead, only 2 games later in Boston, they would finish off LA, destroying them by 39 points. Now looking at our next MVP, we have Tony Parker in 2007. At this point Parker, he was in his 6th NBA season and already a 2-time champion. And I think his 07 playoff run is definitely pretty underrated for the best point guards of the 2000s. And looking at his finals series, he put up some pretty eye-popping stats, averaging 25 points per game, 5 boards, 3 assists, on really odd 57, 57, and 53 splits. And for this series, Parker, he was a leading scorer, outscoring Tim Duncan, as well as LeBron James. And compared to his Spurs team, Parker in this series was responsible for 39% of the team's total offense. And looking at his own finals resume, this series in 07 is by far his best ever finals performance. And one thing I will say about this series, the Spurs of course won 4-0 and they dominated Cleveland. But virtually all 4 games, specifically games 3 and 4, were down to the wire and nail-biting games. But even with that being said, San Antonio in this series, they were the heavy favorites versus a very weak and depleted Cavaliers team. And looking ahead to number 8, we have another point guard, that being Chauncey Billups in the 04 finals. And at this point, Chauncey in his career, he had played 7 years, being on 5 total teams. And for Detroit, it wasn't much better, as their overall franchise was in a 13-year finals drought. But in large part due to Chauncey as well as Ben Wallace and that great defensive team, the 04 Pistons would pull off a massive upset, beating the Shaq, Kobe, Malone, and Peyton Lakers. And looking at this series, Billups averaged 21 points per game, 5 assists and 3 boards, on otherworldly 51, 47, and 93 splits. And his 2 biggest games in this series came in Game 1, where he had 22 points on 58% shooting, and in Game 4, where he had 23 points on 57% shooting. And one more thing I will note, Chauncey in this series only averaged 1 less point than Kobe Bryant on 55 less shot attempts. Once again, pretty impressive, one of the most underrated point guards of the 2000s. Now, looking ahead at number 7, we have Tim Duncan from the 05 finals versus Chauncey's Detroit team. In this series, it was an absolute slugfest and a defensive battle. And looking at how Duncan played in this series, he averaged 21 points, 14 boards, 2 assists, and 2 blocks on 42% shooting. Once again versus Detroit, who was an elite defensive team, these numbers are simply outstanding. And when looking at the overall series, it did go 7 games, with most of the matchups being blowouts. And when looking at Game 7 in San Antonio, the second half of that game Tim Duncan had 17 points, as well as 8 boards. Largely due to that performance, Tim Duncan will win his 3rd and final Finals MVP. And the last thing I'll say about this series, Duncan in total led his team in points, rebounds, as well as blocks, getting his 2nd championship in only 3 seasons. Now getting to the halfway point at number 6, we have Kobe from the 09 finals. in this series was vital to Kobe's legacy and his overall resume post-Shaquille O'Neal. And versus a very odd Magic team, Kobe absolutely dominated, averaging 32 points, 7 assists, 5.5 boards, on 43, 36, and 84 splits. For the most part, LA dominated this series, beating Orlando in 5. And for Kobe individually, that was his highest scoring average in a final series, his highest assist average, and every game but one, he had 30 plus points. The one game he didn't, he had 29. And the last very impressive stat I found is that Kobe in this series was responsible for 47% of his team's overall offense. It was an absolute carry job, and no one but Kobe was winning the 2009 Finals MVP. Now, next up on our list, look at number 5, we have another all-time great shooting guard, that being Dwyane Wade in 2006. And D-Wade at this point was only 24 years old in his third NBA season. And for this series versus Dallas, it was an absolute masterclass and one of the best final series for a player under the age of 25. As D-Wade in this series averaged 34.7 points per game, 7.8 boards, nearly 4 assists, 3 steals, on 47% shooting. Those numbers on its own are very impressive, especially for a player only in their third season. But adding even more context, in this series Miami got down 0-2 to the Dallas Mavericks. And in games 3 through 6, Dwyane Wade was absolutely fantastic, having 42 in Game 3, 36 in Game 4, 43 in Game 5, and 36 in Game 6. Miami won all 4 of those games, with Dwyane Wade nearly averaging 40 points per game on 51% shooting. And quite possibly the best stat in this series is that D-Wade in the fourth quarters was absolutely fantastic, averaging 9.8 points per game. That was more than Dirk, as well as Jason Terry combined in this series. Now looking at number 4, we have Tim Duncan from the 2003 Finals. And Duncan at this point hadn't been to the Finals since 1999. But in 2003, he had one of the best playoff runs ever and was at the peak of his powers at age 26. And looking at this series versus New Jersey, Duncan averaged 24 points per game, 17 boards, 5 assists and 5 blocks with 1 steal on 50% shooting. For this series, leading his team in points, assists, rebounds, as well as blocks. One of the best carry jobs of all time, as his Spurs team was mediocre or average at best. As in this series, he accounted for 40% of the offense, with no teammate averaging above 15 points per game. And looking more in depth at this series, after Game 4, it was tied 2 games apiece. But in Games 5 and 6 collectively, Duncan averaged 25 points, 19 boards, 7 assists, with 6.0 blocks. And in Game 6, up 3-2, Duncan had 21 points, 20 boards, 10 assists, as well as 8 blocks. Now, finally getting to the top 3, at number 3, we have Shaq in 2001. And for Shaquille, this is his third Finals appearance on a Lakers team with a 15-1 playoff record. And that one loss they did have was to AI Sixers in Game 1 of the Finals. And looking at Shaq in this series, he averaged 33, 16, and 5 with 3.5 blocks on nearly 60% shooting. If you go back and watch this series, it's almost comical, as guys like Mutombo, Matt Geiger, Todd McCullough get abused repeatedly. And of course, you guys know in this series, LA, they won in 5 games, winning 4 straight after Game 1. But I will say Shaq's best overall game was actually in that Game 1, having 44 points, 20 boards, and 5 assists on 61% shooting. And in Game 2, he added in 28 points, 20 boards, 9 assists, with 8 blocks on 64% shooting. Now looking at number 2, once again we have Shaq in the 2002 Finals. And for this series, Shaq's Lakers were looking for their 3rd straight championship versus the New Jersey Nets. And I would say out of those 3 rings, this series was by far Shaq's easiest. And with that being the case, he averaged 36, 12, and 4 with 3 blocks on 60% shooting. This series was never close as the Lakers beat New Jersey 4 straight times for their 3rd straight championship. And Shaq in every single game had at least 34 points as well as 10 boards and shot above 54% from the field. Very similar to the 2001 Finals, a prime Shaq was unstoppable, and someone like Keith Van Horn had absolutely no chance. Now finally getting the top spot at number 1, once again we have Shaq in 2000. And this series for Shaq was his first in LA, and I think his toughest championship with the LA Lakers. As in this series, Indiana was taking the 6, with Shaq averaging 38 points, 17 boards, 2 assists and 3 blocks on 61% shooting. Out of all Shaq's final series, in this matchup, he had his most 40-point games as well as 35-point games. And actually in this series, he had 2 games with 35 plus points as well as 20 boards, the most such game in any final series in NBA history. And quite possibly his best game in this series came in Game 6 in the closeout game, having 41 points, 12 boards and 4 assists on 60% shooting. And in the fourth quarter, he had 13 points and didn't miss one single shot. And speaking of those fourth quarters, Shaq in this series was otherworldly, averaging a series high 11.5 points per game on 68% shooting. And when talking about NBA history, this series from Shaq was the most dominant ever from a center, as by averaging 38 points, that's the 4th highest average in NBA Finals history and the highest ever for a center. Now, with our top 10 finally being done, that is the end of the video, and that is the top 10 Finals MVPs from the 2000s decade. As always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoy it. Let me know in your comments below what I got wrong, what I got right. And as always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time.